Great. So thank you everybody for joining in what is our first of several public forums about South Shore Tech's MSBA building project. This we're looking to explain to interested parties where we are in the process, what homework assignments we have that are due in the next few months, and where we hope to be a year from now, and also along the way talk about some of the conceptual designs we have. But more important than just going over all of those talking points is to also be able to answer questions for people who are with us tonight and would like to hear a little bit more. We're working very hard to reach milestones, and having public forums is an important part of the process. I'm joined tonight by members of our project management team as well as our architectural firm, and along with Sandy Baldner, our principal. So do you want to, maybe we should start, Jen, the screen's a little small for me right now, but those of us on the project team, if we could just introduce ourselves.
I think that makes sense. Carl, do you want to stop sharing for just a second, and then
Sure.
we can see folks, and then we'll pop it right back up. But yeah, so do you want me to kick things off?
Thanks, Jen.
All right, perfect. I'm Jen Carlson. I'm with Left Field. We are the owner's project manager for the project. That just means we kind of oversee the entire project and kind of manage it on the owner's behalf. So on the district's behalf, we are managing. And with me today, I have Lynn Stapleton, who is the project advisor. Lynn.
Hello, everyone.
And then Carl, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Carl Franceschi, architect with DRA, with a design firm for the district. And with me is our project architect, Sarah.
Hello there.
Fantastic.
That's our team.
Yes.
We could go
So yeah,
back.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll jump right in.
Yeah, go to the agenda.
Yes, so I'll take you guys through the agenda, and then we'll jump right in. So today's agenda, first, team introductions. We kind of touched on that. We do have some slides that have our faces on it for folks who might be missing from our team. Next, I'll take you through the MSBA process, which includes an update on project timeline, project milestones. Then I'll hand it off to Carl to take you through the design team updates. They'll take you through an update on existing building and site conditions analysis, educational visioning process, and then we'll take a look at the design options that are currently on the table. And then I will quickly take you through upcoming meeting dates and opportunities for community to provide feedback. And then we'll open up to questions. So next slide. This is a slide showing the members of the school committee, the school building committee, to show you the breadth of folks that have been involved to date on the district side, among others. But next slide. This is the Left Field team. So I'm there, Jen Carlson, and Lynn Stapleton is the project advisor down the bottom right. And these are some other folks that you'll see along the way as well. The folks on the bottom, we pull in throughout the process. For instance, Adele Sands has been really instrumental in the beginning part of this project, where you are talking about educational visioning and programming. She is our education liaison. And has a background as a superintendent at Bristol Aggie. So she's been helping us out. You'll see some folks a little further in the process, Bernie and Carlos shown here. Lynn is also working with us along the way. And Sally helps behind the scenes with financial MSBA ProPay administration. Next slide, Carl, if you.
Here, this is a few of the key people from DRA, the architectural team, but likewise, we have a strong bench behind us too of support folks. At varying times in the project, we'll have 4 or 5 more DRA folks involved ultimately, but we also have a whole team of consultants too, engineering, and specialists, structural, site, civil engineers, mechanical, electrical, traffic, educational planners. So I think all in all, it's somewhere in the vicinity of 20 or 25 firms that are behind this. There's a lot of specialization that goes into these projects.
All right, so now for the MSBA process, some of you may know that this project, we will be partnering with the Massachusetts School Building Authority they will partially fund this project. They are a state agency that works with districts to partially fund K-12 schools in Massachusetts. So with that partial funding, they do require us to jump through some hoops. And they have broken their process down into these modules here. Module 1, eligibility period, the district completed before bringing on the project team, that is complete. Then forming the project team, module 2, that is when left field and DRA were brought onto the project. That is also complete. Ongoing is module 3, the feasibility study. This I'll get into it in a second, but this is comprised of 2 major submittals that are provided to the MSBA as checkpoints in the design process. Once those 2 submittals are complete, we'll move into module 4, schematic design. At the end of that submittal, we'll have a project budget. We'll have a single solution option that we will be bringing forth to the district for approval. That would be module 5 down the bottom, secure project funding. So the district will have a chance to approve the project. And if the project is approved, we move into module 6, detailed design, where the design documents, the construction documents, are developed further. Finally, you move into module 7, you're in construction. And then, as you can see, as easy as that, your project is complete. And then you move into project closeout, module 8, and finally, post-occupancy evaluation, module 9. So MSBA makes you complete all of this in order to satisfy their requirements for us to get funding for this project. Next slide. So as I spoke a little bit about in that last slide, there are the 2 major submittals in feasibility study. This is, if you can see, this is kind of broken down into 3 buckets. The top, you can see PDP, which stands for the Preliminary Design Program, which is what we are working towards submitting right now. After that, and I'll get into each one in just a second, after that is the PSR, or the Preferred Schematic Report. And then finally, we move into module 4, which is Schematic Design Report. So PDP, this is where we start working with the district. We do ed programming, which again, Carl will get into in just a second. We take a very close look at the existing conditions. We do site development, and we really, DRA's team develops a whole host of options that we'll get into after this. But this is where we submit all of those options for consideration. So I think right now we have 25 options that include a number of different enrollments, and also a number of different ad renos and new construction options. So at the end of this month, we will be submitting the preliminary design program to the MSBA. From there, during PSR, the preferred schematic report, that is when we narrow all of those options down to a single option. So during that PSR phase, which will bring us through January of 2020, this coming January 24, we will be working to narrow all those options down to a single solution. And that will include choosing an enrollment option, any new programs that might be going into the building, and choosing new construction or an ad reno. And again, from the list of options that Carl will show you in just a moment. Once we submit the PSR, once the district has chosen that singular option, we move forward into schematic design with that option, and DRA and the team works to develop that that one option further. And at the end of schematic design, we will have a total project budget that will be known, that will be able to go out to the towns, the communities, and explain what everyone's share will be, what the share of the MSBA will be. At the end of schematic design, we'll really know what we're asking everyone to approve as a project. Next slide, please. So this is how the timeline breaks down at the moment. You can see the light green on the left is the preliminary design program. That is our first submission to the MSBA. We started that back at the beginning of June when DRA came on board, and now we are submitting that. Our target date is October 25th, so the end of this month. We will be getting costs in just a couple of weeks, and then we'll have a lot more information on each of the options that Carl will be showing us. And then we'll move into the preferred schematic report. This November, December, and January, we will really be working to evaluate all of the options on the table. We'll be narrowing down enrollment and other considerations. And as you can see in these kind of orange colors, we'll be having more community forums to make sure that we're getting community feedback throughout this process. We have a slide with those dates at the end, so I do encourage everyone to follow along with the process and spread the word, tell others to join the community forums. And along with the community forums, we will be having school building committee meetings. We do have one at least once a month. We'll probably be adding a couple into the mix as we move forward. So once we submit the PSR, that single option, at the end of January, we'll be moving forward with that one option and developing that in schematic design through to the end of June when we submit the schematic design report to the MSBA. So once we submit that report, the MSBA takes 2 months to review it, and we will have a board of directors meeting, or the MSBA will have a board of directors meeting to approve the project, the schematic design submittal, and then we will move forward with obtaining the district votes. So district approval will happen either fall of 2024 into early 2025. Still narrowing that date timeline down. Next slide. Off to you, Carl.
So to sort of follow up on what Jen was saying about the status, we're basically wrapping up this first MSBA submission, the preliminary design program, and so we've organized the information tonight kind of into these 4 major categories because those are the 4 primary categories of information and options that the state is interested in, and ensuring that every district goes through these steps. And it does start with looking at existing conditions, of the existing building, and that's looking at both sort of physical conditions of the building and site, but also educational conditions as well. How well does the building basically support, teaching and learning at South Shore currently? And so we and our entire consultant team prepared, have visited the site fairly extensively, documented it, and reporting on it. And we also developed something called a base repair. It's not really an option in the sense of, a strategy going forward, but it is kind of a baseline for comparison. It looks at the building and says, what if we had to fix everything that's deficient? What if we had to bring it up to code in today's codes and today's standards? So it scopes out that bit of work, and it assigns a cost to it. So again, when we have more developed options which address the educational needs as well, the base repair gives us a good baseline for comparison. So for those who aren't familiar with the building, this is a floor plan of the existing building. It is a one-story building, about 125,000 square feet. It's over 60 years old or so. And that in itself tells you a little bit about the existing conditions physically. But as we said too, we look at it from a sort of space standard, educational space standard, and this color coding is a way to show those spaces that kind of meet today's standards. Those are in green. Those that are marginal are in yellow, and those that are below standard are in red. So you can see there's quite a few spaces in the existing building that don't meet today's standards or the Department of Education's requirements and so forth. That those would need to be addressed in any kind of renovation project. But we also looked at the physical conditions. The school has done a good job trying to maintain the building over the years, but certain systems just reach a certain point in their lifespan, but also technology's improved, building construction has actually improved in terms of energy efficiency and tightness and so forth of those kinds of systems. So there are certain needs that do need to be addressed. The building, the school is still making use, for instance, of some space that was considered temporary, modular construction, with an outdoor connection, things like that need to be addressed. And as we said, the interior, the mechanical and electrical systems, there have been, some upgrades to the boilers, for instance, but the basic distribution system and the electrical distribution systems really need to be overhauled. And as far as life safety goes too, the building does not have fire suppression sprinklers in the building, which is a requirement for buildings of this size and type these days. That would have to be, included in any renovation and so forth. And we also look at the equipment. Again, the school does sort of get grants regularly and allocates funds for upgrading equipment. But again, there's still some that in a comprehensive renovation would need to be addressed. And then the other part of this phase of the project is educational programming. That's really saying, how does the school want to teach and have learning occur in the future? Before we design anything, we spend a good amount of time thinking about and identifying sort of a vision for the school, and then trying to translate that into kind of a qualitative and quantitative document called an educational program, and more specifically space summaries. So the visioning process started during the summer. We had 3 2 or 3 hour workshops with a good cross section of the school, teachers, administrators, some parents, couple students, and the design team and our educational consultant as well was sort of facilitating. There were 3 workshops. The first one, you can see what the agendas were. We kind of started at very high level. What are some priorities and goals? The second workshop identified some existing strengths and weaknesses in the existing educational delivery. And again, not just architecturally, but educationally too, from a curriculum point of view and a teaching methodologies and so forth. And then workshop 3 got a little more specific in terms of trying to translate some of these goals into guiding principles for us as the design team and the building committee going forward as to how are we going to evaluate options and develop options and so forth. So just to share those quickly with you, as we said in the first workshop, these were some of the outcomes that, clearly an updated and larger building was the number 1 desire on everyone's mind at that time. Educationally, we thought about, it was mentioned that, we really want to have a building and a program that's student-centered, where students are engaged and they're learning relevant information, obviously, that helps them. It's kind of the nature of career technical education. And from an architectural point of view, one of the highlights that was mentioned was flexibility, you know, understanding that this building, whatever it may be, whether it's an addition renovation or new construction, it needs to serve the district for the next 40 or 50 years. It does need to have some flexibility to adapt to change, but it also needs flexibility in the types of spaces that the teachers and students have access to support the educational methodologies. In the second workshop, again, some of the things that were identified, sort of reinforcing the earlier ones about having personalized and engaging kind of curriculum that support students. These days, you know, it's really recognized that students come with a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different learning styles. And the school is not just about classroom teachers, but it's also about support, you know, through guidance and counselors and administrators as well. And from a design point of view, a few of the things that were emphasized were having open light-filled spaces throughout the school, having good connections to the outdoors, and considering having, you know, more identifiable heart of the school kind of space that the existing building, you know, somewhat lacks. And then in the third workshop, as we said, we focused a little bit more about trying to translate some of those concepts into more meaningful guidelines for the design team and for the building committee going forward. So we did produce diagrams like this, and we developed some guiding principles that, you know, no matter what option is chosen, some of these concepts should be kept in mind that you see there. And as we said, we developed some diagrams that showed how spaces want to be related to one another, that really allowed us as a design team to develop some of the options. And as we said, this was supported by and documented in an educational program that really the school developed, you know, leaning on some of those concepts developed in the visioning sessions, but also kind of through the administrators and lead teachers and department heads came up with, you know, how do we, you know, currently do teaching and learning in every department and program, and how would we like to do it in the future? And again, this is a requirement of the school building authority that says, you know, before the design team really starts developing options, the schools should develop this educational program. And another way that it's sort of quantified is with this state form, and I know you can't read the spreadsheet, but it's a very detailed spreadsheet that lists every space in the current building and space that are desired in the future building. So that's what these various columns are. What exists today, what is proposed, and then the far right column is what are the state standards in that regard too. And this helps the state kind of measure up the program, but also from a funding point of view, it also helps them determine what's eligible for reimbursement and so forth. As Jen mentioned earlier, this form is generally developed for a very specific enrollment for a school in a specific grade structure. But for this project, we actually have a range of enrollments to study. And so we have a range of space summaries. 5 different ones are actually being considered here, all the way from what the existing enrollment is, basically around 645 students, up to a maximum potential of 975 students. And that's based on, you know, recognizing that the district may take on more communities as part of the region, which they've just done, as you probably know, by including Marshfield, but also thinking about it in the future. But and the other variable may be the district may want to consider adding more so-called Chapter 74 career tech programs beyond what they currently offer. And so with those variables, the state said, okay, you should study and consider, you know, everything from 645 students all the way up to 975. So having those 5 variables is what kind of multiplies the number of options being considered here. So here they are in sort of quantified numbers for you, and having on a preliminary basis produced drafts of these space summaries. The amount of space required for 645 students is somewhere over 200,000 square feet. And you might remember I mentioned the existing building is 125,000. So you can see the deficiencies there. The size of the gym, the lack of an auditorium, some of the outbuildings are not part of the main school, and so forth. And then all the way up to, if the school were to consider the 975 students, you can see how much larger the building would need to be. And again, this is based on not just state standards, but on the visioning and educational program developed by the school. Another part of this first submission is identifying what are the site requirements for the school. Everything is mundane. You might think is how many parking spaces are required, how many buses are required, how many athletic fields are desired, and so forth. And, you know, trying to map that onto the existing property. There's a little bit of give and take there as to what the site can accommodate. But it is part of the sort of the educational program and the site program, you might say, that go into evaluating and developing options to identify these, address these needs. So here's the existing site for those, again, who aren't familiar with it. Webster Street is kind of this diagonal street here. North is up on the photograph here. The existing school, the white part of it is actually the older part of the building, which was re-roofed more recently. The black part there is the 1992, I think it was, addition that still has its original roof there. And then behind the school are the current athletic fields, which basically comprise a track with a football field on the inside and kind of a overlaid softball field, and then a baseball field. And the grass areas are essentially used as practice areas as well when there aren't formal games going on. And you can see that the parking kind of surrounds the building. There's a fair amount of parking in front, student parking lot off to the north here, and then parking behind the school, as well as service areas to the various shops that need truck access and so forth. The school does have their own buses as well on a portion of the site around the back there, and there is access all around the school. And you might not also realize that the school did pick up this adjacent residential property, and there's some administrative use now to what was a house. And there is a sort of a barn or garage on the property as well that will be used to help support the maintenance and storage needs of the district, and just provide a little more flexibility overall, and given available property. Because when we do map the property lines on here and look at some wetlands, you can see that the site is really constrained. There's a fair amount of wetlands. This area is low in general back here. And so having that additional property does provide a little more flexibility in thinking about options. And when we consider options, we do look at the full spectrum. We don't have a preconception that it's going to be a new school, or a preconception that it has to be an addition renovation. We do look at everything from a pure renovation. We know that in this case, it's not going to satisfy even the lowest enrollment. There's not enough space within the four walls of the existing building. So we are looking at some addition renovation options. We are looking at new construction options. And as I mentioned, just for comparative purposes, we do have that base repair identified too, just to fix deficiencies in the existing building. So in terms of, you know, kind of addressing how would we add on to this school, or where could we site a new school, this diagram kind of sums that up. There's sort of areas in front of the school and around the back that we think are prime areas to consider for addition. Some of these other areas, even though we look at them, they may be needed in conjunction, but the majority of available space is really on kind of the north and east sides of the building, you may say, wrapping around the front there. And then in terms of new construction options, the athletic fields are really the available site. Even though, you know, there is some adjacent land that the school owns, it is kind of segregated by those wetlands. We may be able to use them perhaps with a strategic crossing to for some parking or maybe an athletic field. But as far as the major building zones go, it really is the current athletic fields. And so the new construction options, just to share those with you first, we have 3 of them. We've kind of given them names that can reflect sort of the shaping of them. One is a courtyard configuration, one's a more linear organization along a kind of major circulation spine, and one has more wings to it. These are all multi-story buildings because that's another, you know, constraint. We can't really fit a sprawling 1-story school on those available parcels. So the first one is that courtyard configuration. Again, Webster Street kind of is at the top of the plan here, and where the new building is sited in this sketch is where the current athletic fields are. And you can just barely see ghosted in here where the existing school is. The strategy with each of these new construction options is to find a location where basically a new school can be built with minimal disruption of the existing school. Clearly, they're going to lose their athletic fields, but in terms of they still would have some parking, they'd still have ability, you know, to circulate around the school for pickup and drop off and access to, and the existing building could continue in use while the new school is being constructed. And this school, as you can see, is configured in a courtyard with a drive around the entire building for access again to those career tech shops that need access. In this case, it might be a way to route buses around to separate it from cars. It gives a longer pickup and drop off for parents picking up or dropping off students there, with again some larger parking areas on a couple sides of the building. And then once the existing building can be removed, we can just barely get in those 3 major fields: a track and football field, a softball field, and a new baseball field, and this major, you know, access road coming through here. And just to quickly show you, these are very conceptual floor plans, but they do kind of embody the full program. We would have variations on this depending on the enrollment. So obviously the size of these shops, the number of classrooms would vary, but the basic concept and organization would apply, whether it's the 645 enrollment or all the way up to 975. The basic organization of this option would remain. And this shows the larger assembly spaces on one side of the building and the academic spaces kind of wrapping around the other 3 sides of the courtyard, with a main entrance adjacent to administration, which would also be the after-hours entrance for the public to access, you know, an event in the auditorium or an event in the gym, which is on the 2nd floor stacked above the locker rooms, again, in order to keep the footprint compact. This school, as you know, also accommodates the public, and so we'd want to get a visible and accessible entrance dedicated to the public, but safe and secure, so that this inner door could be locked. As people come in, they can only access the culinary and cosmetology salon from this entrance here. There would be some administrative presence at this end of the building too, in addition to sort of supervising and welcoming at this end of the building. And as we said, it would be a multi-story solution. So some of the shops would be stacked on the 2nd floor, along with classrooms and science labs and so forth wrapping around. So all these spaces get daylight. And then, as we said, the gym is on top of the locker rooms. The auditorium is a 2-story high space. You can enter at the upper level as well. And the library would be located on this level too, kind of above the student commons, which is also the cafeteria. The second option that we referred to as kind of linear, I know it's not linear in a straight line, but it's linear in that it's organized around a major circulation corridor, again, with sort of the public functions at one end And then the shops and some administrative and classroom spaces along this corridor, both on the first and upper floors as well, would follow this. And again, the circulation path around the building to a service area and back. A major, drop off in this case could be for buses, and a secondary drop off pickup line for cars to safely separate those folks. And again, getting in a slightly different configuration, a track and football field or multi-purpose field, baseball and softball in the front of the school once the existing school is demolished in this case. And again, similar organization, you can see, again, the first floor is virtually entirely career tech shops, and those assembly spaces at one end of the building, along with the commons, which is also the cafeteria. And then above it on 2 stories, so it's a 3-story building in this case, again, some low bay shops, and then the balance of classroom academic spaces, science labs, classrooms, the library, the gym, and so forth. And then the third option takes a slightly different configuration. Instead of being stretched out along one corridor, it basically has wings buildings and service areas in between those wings. But again, it has a slightly different possibility of how to organize the access drive and the athletic fields in the front. And those wings are organized again in sort of career clusters. Here in this case, the construction trades may share this service area: carpentry, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, where they could use the outdoor space for collaboration, perhaps in building some projects and so forth. And again, there's still a dedicated entrance for the public to access the restaurant or the salon at one end, and a major visitors entrance adjacent to administration at the other end of the building. And here's what those upper floors would look like. Again, there'd be stacking of the low bay shops and the classrooms and science labs along this corridor, with the library kind of more central in this option, but still the gym, trying to keep the building compact, lifted up to the second floor above the locker rooms, with dedicated stairwells immediately adjacent. And then for the addition renovation options, we have 2 primary configurations to share with you. One we call sort of the L-shaped one which creates a courtyard. So the first one is this L-shaped bit of new construction wrapping around the existing building, basically around the gym and cafeteria. It would require a bit of demolition as a first phase to create this building zone, but it does give more area then for new construction, and it allows the school to create kind of a new image, a new front door, while renovating the balance of the existing building on the ground floor. And the way that would look three-dimensionally, the gray is kind of the existing building, the white is the new construction wrapping around. And again, it would vary as to exactly how big this footprint would need to be, depending on the enrollments. In some of the larger enrollments being considered, there would actually need to be additional additions, like in addition to the cafeteria, or in addition to the auto shop or the electrical shop. In addition to this major bit of new construction, there'd be some other pieces of new construction perhaps required on the other options. And then the second addition renovation option is the one, it's still sort of L-shaped, but now kind of to the back of the building, wrapping around the existing gym, creating an outdoor light well or courtyard here to get light to some of these interior spaces. And in this case, one of the major programmatic differences is we're keeping the existing gym, even though it's substandard in terms of size. We would renovate the locker rooms. We would build new weight room and fitness room off of it. But this is saying perhaps just again to give a variety of options for the district to consider. What if we kept the existing gym? And what if we kept the existing auditorium as the multi-purpose kind of step to floor presentation space? It again is smaller than a new one would be. In the previous option, we were building a new gym and converting the existing gym into an auditorium. So you can see the difference in size between this, current space and the current gym if it were to be converted. And this option again basically keeps the existing building, the existing front door. Everything in gray would be renovated fully, like new, all new systems and so forth. And then the white area is the new construction towards the back and wrapping around the existing gym. So those are the options that are on the table right now and being discussed and considered with the building committee. And we certainly welcome your input too from the community aspect of this as to your thoughts going forward, because a final decision is coming in the next phase. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jen to mention upcoming community meetings.
Yes, thank you, Carl. And thank you for that update. So upcoming community forums, we have, I believe we've scheduled one in Marshfield for November 9th. Tom, is that, can you just confirm that one? I saw that.
Yep, we can confirm November 9th, and we can confirm 7 p.m. for these upcoming forums.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
And I'm sorry,
there,
Jen, and Rockland, it says TBD, but we've secured December 5th.
Right.
And we'll,
right.
yeah, for that.
Yep, perfect. I will, I'll update this before we post this to the website and make sure it's updated. So December 5th at the Rockland Senior Center. And then Thursday, December 14th at Whitman Town Hall. So those are the upcoming in-person community forums. And again, this one will be recorded and put, or was recorded and will be put up on the website, which I'll share with you in just a moment. We also have building committee meetings. These are typically held on the first Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. Should have added that too. 6 p.m. Start for the building committee meetings. So those are sometimes in person, sometimes virtual, sometimes a hybrid. So we post those on the website as well. So keep an eye out for those. And next slide. And here you can see this is the project website. It's southshoretechproject.com. So check that out, and we'll be updating it after each meeting. So and every time we have a submission, and anytime we have anything that any documents that should be widely spread about and shared publicly. So with that, are there any questions on any part of the presentation?
Hi, my name's Christine. Thank you very much for preparing all this information. I'm a resident of Hanover, a direct neighbor. First, I want to say I believe in the mission, and I believe in that the Voc Tech needs to be overhauled and improved. Father was an electrician. I firmly love the trades. As a neighbor, I have a couple of concerns. One, lighting. 2, parking. 3, the traffic. Traffic in Hanover has grown substantially. It's going to continue to grow with 53. I am very grateful for school dismissal and the improvements that I've seen with the traffic flow and with teachers outside. I work from home, and it has been drastically improved this year. So I'm very grateful, but I want to see that continue. Sidewalks, I would love to see that. That's just selfishly in Hanover. And then I think I have one other one, signage. I'd love to make sure that, I think Hanover passed, I don't know what it's called, a bylaw or whatever, but the electronic signage, I wouldn't want to see that increased. I'd love to see, we're a developing town, but it was still agricultural in nature. And I would love to kind of keep that feel to it. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the South Shore Voc Tech to kind of hold on to those roots, and as it gets developed, to kind of retain some of that character of the town. And I would love to see that incorporated in the plans if possible. And then thank you for sharing the 3D renditions of the two renovated buildings. I'd love to see the 3D renditions of the proposed builds, the three proposed builds.
Mhm.
I wish the building could be moved in the back, like further. The building could be in the front, and having the football field in the front just makes me so nervous. I do not want to be looking at that all day long. And the lighting is really a concern for me. So I'll pause there. Those are my comments. And then I don't know if any of the other people on the call have questions or concerns, or if we want to address those or talk about them, I guess.
I'm happy to
Christine, do you
jump
live
in and
directly across the street.
I do.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, neighbor. Thanks for those comments. I would say most, but not all, of the topics you've brought up, we have been talking to our project team about. And so the football field running tight to Webster Street, field lights. We do want this school to fit into the character of this residential area. And I'm glad that you're emphasizing these points as an abutter, and I would assume you wouldn't be the only person feeling that way, living so close to the school. And thank you for the feedback on the traffic as well. That is something that we are going to continue to maintain as we've seen increased parent pickup and drop off, and that certainly is helpful feedback. But yeah, we're on the cusp of getting some updated renderings, and certainly that's something that will be helpful in future forums to show. But yeah, please, absolutely, I concur that it is a priority to figure out how it fits into the character of the area that we abut. I agree.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you so much, Christine.
You're welcome. Thank you. I definitely want to be part of the solution, not the problem. So
Thank you.
Here's a question.
Go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead, Kevin.
Got a question. So I was wondering, I know I was in the carpentry class in 2017, and I was wondering, behind the carpentry shop, there's those two big gray buildings. What is the plan to do with those? Is there a plan to tear those down or build something in replacement of those if the school gets moved further back?
So Kevin, the buildings behind what we have right now. So we've got a greenhouse now that's part of our horticulture program. We have a maintenance building, and then we have the barn that you would have remembered, which now houses a part of horticulture. And we also retrofitted it. It's also an extra locker room that the kids built, so we could service some teams that are. So we just don't have the capacity in the building. With the ad reno models right now, those at least the greenhouse and the maintenance building would stay. That building to the left, the one that you probably remember, that one would probably be best taken down, because in an ad reno we would have sufficient locker room space, and so taking that building down and using that for some open space, that's one train of thought. If we go brand new and we build out on what you remember as the baseball field, then it would be the school in the back, parking in the middle, athletic fields from what you saw from those other drawings. So it's likely that those structures would come down. That hasn't been totally determined yet, but in order to allow for parking, that would be a priority consideration.
Okay. Cool.
Were you part of building one of those structures, Kevin?
I was on the inside crew of the carpentry shop, but really didn't go on the outside crew as much.
Yeah.
But all the teachers I worked with were great.
Yeah, we actually like to, keep that option open of even if we build a new school, invariably there's a need for outbuildings or maintenance and so forth, and we like to leave some opportunities for the carpentry and other construction trade students to contribute to the project over the
Right.
years. It may not happen immediately, but to build some of those outbuildings. So even if it's new, there'd probably be some more student involvement in the project.
True. Yep. Cool.
I have more comments than questions. My name is John Galvin. I live in Whitman. I've spent the last 3 years as a member of the Whitman Middle School Building Committee. I actually recently resigned from that committee because, in my opinion, the costs of the to the taxpayers spiraled out of control. What I want, just a couple comments in that. You are in the stage right now where you're going through the educational plan, and you're going to be driving, as you saw in those spreadsheets, driving square footage. And I want to really make the comment that square footage is the most important thing that you want to consider. So as you're looking at the 3 different options for building construction, think about what's going to be the least of the square footage that you can go for. And the reason why I say that is at the Whitman Middle School, being a middle school, it's going to have a lot more ineligible costs than high school is going to have. But what I found in going forward was it was the excess square footage that drove our project to the point where the costs were too high, in my opinion. And the reason why that is, and you'll find that out as you talk about it, and you've probably heard, is that MSBA has a limit, even on eligible costs, on how much per square foot they will pay for. So Whitman square footage came in at about 978. No, it was up to 970, I think it was. But the MSBA only reimburses around 395. So even on those eligibles, there was so much of that square footage that wasn't reimbursable. So even though our reimbursement rate was over 62%, we're actually only getting about 34% reimbursement total. So focus as you're going through, and I was part of the educational plan. I'm not a teacher, but I was on the subcommittee that drove all that square footage. And had I going back looking at it, I would have focused on square footage, keeping the square footage as close to the MSBA standard as you can. And I'll also comment in that with as many in the existing with the renovations, I think you'll find as you go forward, and obviously you'll find this out on your own, that the renovation addition costs are going to be just too high to even really consider, because there's so much of that building that isn't, is under MSBA standards, that you have to renovate them all. I mean, that was the same problem Whitman Middle had. It was an old building. But focus on the square footage. You guys deserve it. I know you guys, we jumped ahead of you guys. You were applying way before Whitman was, and I'm glad you finally got in, and I'm impressed on how fast you've gone. I think you were a couple years behind us, and now you're only like 10 months behind us. And that being said, the Whitman is going to town meeting in November. If it passes, it's going to be a challenge for Whitman to now look at South Shore Tech next year, 14 months. So the most you can do to really focus on that square footage, because we're the largest one, Whitman, 24% enrollment, whatever. Even if you add more, you're still gonna, add more towns, you're gonna increase the square footage. So Whitman's got its hands full. I want to support you guys as much as you can. And in my experience, you've done a wonderful job so far, and best of luck going forward.
Thanks, John. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, thanks, John. We're definitely aware of those issues, and one of the strategies that we try to employ is the use of what you might call multi-purpose space, so that we avoid building single-use space that doesn't get used all day long. So things like the student commons, where it's sort of the lobby to the auditorium or the lobby to the gym, but it's also the cafeteria. It's also a circulation space. Generally, we can save space that way to do just what you're talking about, to keep the building as small as possible and make sure we don't exceed MSBA standards, so the district ends up with ineligible space.
And if I could just jump in, obviously, as you heard, we are very concerned about the square footage and the cost of the building, and we're really paying close attention to that as we move forward. I think something that we've been hearing, I think, and if Lynn Stapleton from my office is still on, maybe she can speak a little to this, but the MSBA, I think at their October board meeting, they might be for projects, I think in our stage might benefit. I'm not sure about a project, the Whitman Middle School, but they will be expanding some of that square foot cost reimbursement cap. And what we've heard is expanding it by quite a lot. I think what Lynn had told me yesterday was 525 square foot for
That's
just
awesome.
the building, plus 52 square foot for the site. So it could be a quite significant jump in MSBA participation for this South Shore Tech project, which would be huge. So we're taking all of that into consideration, and as we move forward with the options in the next phase, we'll be doing to look at what our initial thoughts are and what the MSBA participation will be, and what each town's participation will be, so that that's a consideration as the SBC and the school committee are considering the options moving forward. So it's top of our mind, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? If not, this might be a good point to wrap up. It's 7:02. And again, this will be on the website, and there are ways to contact us through the website if you have follow-up questions or just looking to get more involved. That is definitely encouraged. Like we mentioned before, the community forums are a place, please participate there. The school building committee meetings are public meetings, so come listen, or if it's a hybrid meeting, listen in, or just participate. That is what we encourage you to do going forward. Tom, any last words?
Thanks, Jen. No, I appreciate the feedback. The presentation, I think, for the purpose of having it on our website, will be very helpful. We're going to start getting some cost estimates on these designs in the next few weeks. It's going to help drive those school building committee conversations when we start to look at price tags and then overlay that with enrollment and programming. The goal is to get to the most modern building that can serve the most kids that the communities can afford. And I think my gut tells me that once we start seeing some of these prices, we're going to start ruling out some of these options that are clearly going to be super, super expensive. And the goal is not to eliminate the waiting list that we have for our school. If we end up with a new school or a renovated school, my gut tells me that there would still be some sort of waiting list, because to build to meet 100% of student demand would be cost prohibitive. So I'm eager to get into that next phase. The building committee agendas, the public forums, as we go deeper into the fall, the presentations that Jen and Carl will be doing will have more of this information. So whether you're able to attend another one or you catch it on the website, there will be more information coming very soon, so that we can get to that point, as Jen said, of being able to narrow that triangle down to that preferred approach by the end of December. So we're looking forward to the work.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
All right. Good night. Thanks.